Have you ever had a moment where you thought, I love my family, but I just want everyone to leave me alone? Or maybe you've imagined packing a bag, driving somewhere quiet, turning off your phone and disappearing for a few days. Not because you don't love your life, but because you feel exhausted by it. And the confusing part is, from the outside, your life might look completely fine. You're functioning, you're responsible, you keep showing up, you keep holding everything together, but internally you feel mentally overloaded, emotionally drained, touched out, pulled in every direction, and secretly you fantasize about escape. And if that's you, I want you to know something straight away. This does not make you selfish. This does not make you ungrateful, and it does not mean you're failing. It usually means you've been emotionally carrying for too long. I'm Suzie and I'm a therapist, and at 58 years old, I talk honestly about emotional overwhelm, burnout, relationships, trauma, healing, and what really happens in midlife when, like me, you've spent years being everything for everybody else. Today I want to talk about why so many high-functioning women secretly want to escape their lives, because there is a reason this feeling becomes so intense in midlife, and chances are it's deeper than you think. Stay tuned as I will explain some of the signs you may have been invisibly ignoring, and I'll talk later in the video what we can do to heal, understand ourselves better, and to become more our authentic selves and live happier lives. Firstly, you are not tired because you are weak. One of the biggest misconceptions around burnout is that it only happens to people who can't cope, but actually burnout often happens to people who cope too well. The women who push through, the women who keep going, and everyone depends on. You become the organizer, the emotional support, the fixer, the reliable one, strong one, and after years of this, your nervous system starts carrying the constant level of emotional responsibility. You wake up already thinking, what needs doing? Who needs me? What have I forgotten? And what emotional atmosphere do I need to manage today? And eventually, your brain stops experiencing life as a place to live and starts experiencing it as a list to survive. I know this feeling myself. There have been moments where I've sat in silence after a long day and thought, I don't actually want anything from anybody right now. I just want some peace. Not drama, not conversation, not another decision, just stillness. And so often when you say you want to escape your life, what you actually mean is, I want relief from the constant pressure that I carry every single day. That is very difficult because deep down you may not want to leave your life, you just want to stop feeling consumed by it. Midlife forces you to see what you've been ignoring. Midlife is incredibly confronting because it's often the first time in your life where the distractions stop working. In your 20s and 30s, there is movement, achievement, raising children, building careers, relationships, responsibility, survival. But midlife has a way of slowing everything down just enough for you to finally hear yourself. And sometimes what you hear is, I'm exhausted. I don't know who I am anymore. I've spent years looking after everybody else. I don't even know what I need. And this can feel frightening because you may built an identity around being capable. So when you suddenly feel emotionally trapped, resentful, disconnected, or even empty, you judge yourself. But often this isn't a breakdown. It's an awakening. Your mind and body are trying to tell you that the version of you that survived over functioning cannot continue forever. And this becomes even more intense during hormonal changes, perimenopause, menopause, grief, relationship strain, aging parents, children becoming more independent, and years of accumulating emotional labour. Everything you suppress starts rising to the surface. The resentment, the exhaustion, the loneliness, the pressure, the grief for yourself. And suddenly the fantasy of escaping feels less dramatic and more like emotional survival. The invisible mental load is heavier than people realise. One thing I speak about a lot on this channel is emotional load, because so many people underestimate how psychologically exhausting it is. You are not just physically doing things, you are mentally carrying things, remembering, planning, anticipating, managing, emotionally monitoring. You become the person who notices everything: the birthdays, the appointments, the shopping, the emotional tension, the moods, the needs, the dynamics. And when you carry this role for years, your nervous system really gets to rest fully. Even when you sit down, your mind is still working. And what makes this harder is that high functioning women often minimize their exhaustion because you tell yourself, well, everybody is stressed, other people have it worse, I should be grateful. But gratitude and exhaustion can exist together. You can love your family and still be overwhelmed. You can appreciate your life and still feel emotionally depleted. You can be successful and still be deeply unhappy internally. Those things are not mutually exclusive. And one of the saddest things I see in women feeling guilty for needing space, but needing space is human. Needing rest is human. Needing emotional support after years of supporting everybody else is human. And if you're listening to this and feeling seen right now, I'd really love to know in the comments, have you ever secretly wanted to escape? Not because you don't love your life, but because you feel emotionally overwhelmed by it. And you are definitely not alone in this. And if these conversations around emotional load, burnout, healing, and midlife are helping you feel understood, please like and subscribe and share this video with somebody who may need it too. I also created a free ebook called Unpacking the Heart: Understanding Emotional Load, which explores this in much more depth and gives you practical tools to begin reconnecting with yourself. You can download that free in the link in the description. Why you feel guilty for wanting more. A lot of women in midlife carry silent guilt because on paper life may look okay, so you wonder, why do I feel like this? And this guilt becomes another emotional burden. But here's something important: your nervous system does not measure your pain based on appearances. It responds to chronic stress and chronic responsibility, chronic emotional suppression, chronic self-abandonment, and many high-functioning women have spent years disconnecting from themselves. You become so externally focused that eventually you stop asking, what do I need? What do I feel? What makes me happy? What drains me? What hurts me? You adapt, you accommodate, you people please, and you survive. And over time, parts of you slowly disappear. That is why midlife feels emotionally disorientating, because suddenly there is a part of you trying to come back home. The version of you beneath the roles, beneath the expectations, the endless responsibility. Sometimes the urge is to escape, but actually the urge is to reconnect. Reconnect with the rest, peace, and with yourself. You were never meant to carry everything alone. I think one of the most dangerous things society praises in women is silent endurance. You can get rewarded for coping, being selfish, being available, being emotional, strong, sacrificing yourself quietly, and eventually your body starts speaking the truth with that your mouth never said, through anxiety, irritability, emotional numbness, through fatigue, resentment, and disconnection. Sometimes you don't even recognize yourself anymore. You look fine externally, internally, you're emotionally claustrophobic. And I think so many women feel ashamed about admitting this, especially mothers, carers, women who are used to being dependable. The dependable one. And emotional overwhelm is not weakness. It is often the result of unsupported responsibility. And that is why support matters. Rest matters. Boundaries honestly matter. You cannot continue pouring from an empty nervous system forever. At some point, your mind and body will demand attention, and often the fantasy of escaping is your internal world trying to create distance from constant overstimulation, not because you want to abandon your life, but because you desperately need to breathe within it. What you actually need may surprise you. Sometimes, when you feel like escaping, your mind tells you, I need a completely different life. But often, what you truly need is more support, more boundaries, more emotional safety, rest, and more honesty, more connection to yourself. You may need permission to stop performing strength all the time. You may need relationships where you do not always have to hold everything together. You may need to stop abandoning yourself in order to maintain peace for everyone else. And this healing process can feel uncomfortable initially. Because if you have spent years over functioning, slowing down can trigger guilt. Rest can feel unfamiliar, boundaries can feel selfish, receiving support can feel uncomfortable. But healing often begins when you stop measuring your worth by how much you can carry. I had to learn this too. As someone who naturally wants to help people, support people, and hold space for people emotionally, I realised there were moments where I was giving so much externally that internally I was becoming depleted. And I think many women reach a point where they realise I cannot keep abandoning myself just to keep everything running. That awareness changes everything, because once you start listening to yourself honestly, you begin creating the life that is more emotionally sustainable. I think this is one of the deepest truths in midlife. You reach a point where survival is no longer enough. You don't just want to function anymore. You want peace. You want authenticity. You want softness, connection, and you want to feel alive again. And there is nothing wrong with that. You are allowed to outgrow patterns that kept you emotionally exhausted. You are allowed to stop carrying everyone and create boundaries. You are allowed to prioritize your nervous system, and you are allowed to rebuild your relationships with yourself. Because the truth is, the version of you that is constantly overfunctioning was probably created through years of conditioning. Maybe you learned early that love meant caregiving. Maybe you became the responsible one. Maybe you learned to suppress your own needs. Maybe you survived by becoming emotionally useful. And if you have spent years proving your worth through what you do for everybody else, eventually your soul gets tired, not because you're weak, but because no human being was ever meant to emotionally carry this much alone. I think this is why so many women hit midlife and suddenly feel emotional discomfort. They cannot ignore anymore, because something inside you starts saying there has to be more than this, more than surviving, more than constantly managing, more than endlessly giving, more than disappearing inside responsibility. And honestly, that voice matters, because sometimes the desire to escape is actually the beginning of awakening, the beginning of finally listening to yourself, the beginning of recognizing that you matter too. Not just what you do, not just what you provide, not just how much you hold everything together. You, your well-being, your peace, your emotional world. And I truly believe this is where healing starts, not in becoming somebody new, but in finally becoming yourself. So if you have been feeling emotionally trapped lately, if you have been fantasizing about running away, disappearing for a while, booking a hotel room alone, driving somewhere quiet, or just wanting silence from the constant demands around you, please know this. You are not selfish for feeling that way. You are likely emotionally overwhelmed. You are likely mentally overloaded. And you are somebody who has spent years carrying far too many people than you realise, because high functioning women often look completely fine externally while internally they're exhausted. Stop judging yourself for needing support and judging yourself for wanting peace, because your nervous system was never designed to constantly survive in pressure. The healing is not always about escaping your life. Sometimes it is about finally creating a life you no longer need to escape yourself, where your needs matter too, where your emotions matter too, where you are no longer abandoning yourself just to keep everyone else comfortable. That starts with honesty, honesty about you carrying, honesty about what's draining you, about what you need now, because midlife is not just a breaking point, it also becomes a turning point, a return back to yourself. If this video resonated with you, I'd really love to hear from you in the comments. What part of this video made you feel most seen? And have you ever had moments where you secretly wanted to escape, not because you don't love your life, but because you feel emotionally overwhelmed by it? I think these conversations are so important because so many women silently carry this weight while pretending they are coping. And if you want more honest conversations around emotional burnout, healing, relationships, trauma, boundaries, and nervous system overwhelm, and navigating midlife, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. It genuinely helps this message reach more women who need to hear that they are not alone. And don't forget, I've created a free ebook called Unpacking the Heart, Understanding Emotional Load, which I've linked below in the description box. It will help you better understand the invisible emotional load you may have been carrying for years and begin reconnecting with yourself in a gentler and more compassionate way. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. Please take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.